Hello and welcome to UI Chat from the Interface, the monthly show talking about everything Ubiquiti and networking. I'm your host Alex, and once again I'm joined by my co-host Evan McCann. Welcome Evan, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I will say I'm going to jinx us here, but I know, last month we had some products released. I think it was the day we recorded or the day after.
It was the day after. Yeah.
So I want to say there's still a few days left in June, but it was a relatively quiet month, and if we can make it past the next few days here, I think June will be a quiet month, and hopefully we'll have more to talk about next month. But hopefully Ubiquiti doesn't pull the same thing they did last time and release some products on us.
I'll try and get this episode out a bit quicker than usual, so we can sort of get in there before Ubiquiti can announce anything tomorrow.
Yeah.
So yeah, last time we recorded the U7. It wasn't the U7 Outdoor. What did they announce last time? Wasn't the U7 Pro?
It was all three. So the U7 Pro was announced, I don't remember exactly, I want to say a couple months ago, like earlier this year. And then, yes, in late May, so I think it was the day after we recorded. Yeah, I just pulled it up. May 30th, they released the U7 Pro Max, the Pro Wall, and the Outdoor. So they added three more Wi-Fi 7 APs, and that was unfortunate for our recording, but good to see those three models.
Yeah, and that was... Oh, yeah, makes sense. Yeah, so the U7 Outdoor is... you got quite a detailed blog post on your website, evanmccann.net. But all of these support 6 gigahertz apart from the U7 Outdoor, which... and the U7 Outdoor is more of a directional Wi-Fi antenna, which is quite a new thing for Ubiquiti in terms of an all-in-one outdoor device. But it doesn't support 6 gigahertz, which you alluded to in your blog post, and you said it's an area that I'm familiar with as well. But different regions have different requirements and legislations for what wireless you can use outdoors. And your theory was that 6 gigahertz has some restrictions on that. So.
Yeah, so to be clear, Wi-Fi 7 is the next generation Wi-Fi standard. It's 802.11be, whereas Wi-Fi 6 was 802.11ax, Wi-Fi 5 was 802.11ac. So this is just like the next generation. There's a lot of things that come along with that, and one of the things is technically optional 6 gigahertz support. So we had Wi-Fi 6E, which added 6 gigahertz support, and that varies by country. There's a bunch of different regulations for how you can use 6 gigahertz in Wi-Fi, because that spectrum is in use for a lot of different things. A lot of it's like Earth to satellite communication or TV broadcasts. Like there's a lot of other people that are in the 6 gigahertz space. So when you're indoors, there's a low power indoor set of rules you have to follow for 6 gigahertz operation, and that's something that like the U6 Enterprise, the U7 Pro, the U7 Pro Max, all those indoor APs, they are 6 gigahertz low power indoor access points. To do full power outdoor 6 gigahertz operation, whether it's Wi-Fi 6E, Wi-Fi 7, doesn't matter. If you're outdoors operating in the 6 gigahertz channels, there's a lot more complicated stuff involved. You need a GPS antenna. You need to follow the AFC system, which is similar to DFS, the way DFS manages some of those 5 gigahertz bands. Mm-hmm. It's to protect those incumbent users that are, sending their TV broadcast on 6 gigahertz. If you're outdoors trying to provide Wi-Fi, you need to defer to them. So that's why I think I know that was probably the number one complaint with those three models was the U7 Outdoor doesn't have 6 gigahertz. There are a lot of people saying, hey, I'm going to wait for the Pro model or, the next one that does have it. But I think a lot of it comes down to how complicated those outdoor rules are.
Yeah, but it isn't just a name for name's sake. So each one of these Wi-Fi standard updates, they do have improvements to 2.4 and 5. I remember that between 82.11n and AX, 2.4 didn't get touched, I believe. Like the standard just got left alone, and it was improved with
Not
AX.
Officially.
Oh, not officially. Oh, okay.
So yeah, that's another thing I've had people complain to me about is not officially. Qualcomm and including vendors like Ubiquiti, like I believe with the ACHD, they included non-standard enhancements to the 2.4 gigahertz radio. So yes, Wi-Fi 5 AC did not officially apply to 5 gigahertz, or didn't officially apply to 2.4, but asterisks apply. But yes, you are correct that it focused on 5 gigahertz.
Yeah, but there are some. So the U7 Outdoor is still better than other APs before it because whatever improvements there are to BE has been applied to 5 gigahertz. I can't tell you them off my top of my head because I don't really know. But
yeah, the big ones are like 4K QAM, 4096 QAM. So that's higher data rates when you're really close to your AP. That's something that was added in Wi-Fi 7. Multi-link operation, where an AP can communicate to multiple clients. That was something Ubiquiti promised in a firmware update, which I believe is now out.
I think so.
More spatial streams. There's just everything that comes with the Wi-Fi 7 standard, which is a lot more than just does it have 6 gigahertz or not. Like it's an enhancement for 2.4 and 5.
Yeah, pretty much. And then there's the Pro Max U7 Pro Max. That's essentially just the same as the U7 Pro, but with more spatial streams, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah, and the big thing with the U7 Pro Max is it adds the spectral scanning radio.
Yeah.
So that's similar to the AC SHD back in the day, which I know you have some experience with.
Yeah.
But yes, it seems like this is real this time. I know I didn't watch the full video, but I saw that Chris Sherwood from Crosstalk Solutions had a video about the features that are unlocked in the software with that. So I don't have a U7 Pro Max. I haven't played around with it, but it's like helping with channelization. You can view real-time interference. There's a lot of features in the UniFi network application that are unlocked with that. And that's something a lot of other vendors do, and that kind of plays into their push into enterprise wireless there.
Yeah. And then you've got the U7 Pro Wall again. Chris and Cody done videos on that. It's like a beefed up version of a in-wall AP, but it hasn't got a switch built in. And they've said it's the first AP designed for interior designers or something along those lines. Like similar to the AI theta, whatever they call it.
Yeah,
so
it's the AI theta of in-wall access points. theta, whatever it is.
But that one sits sort of inside the wall, and you can paint. I think we discussed last episode. You can paint. That was for the U7 Pro cover thing. Same material. You can paint it whatever you want and draw on it and stuff. But it just sort of sits nice and flush. So some good stuff there, to be fair.
Yeah, and the big complaint you pointed out, it's the lack of built-in switch ports. So a lot of the reason that people really like the in-wall APs is not only that you can just easily mount it in kind of like a wall, electrical outlet, junction box, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But it would give you some Ethernet ports to plug in your TV, PlayStation, whatever, whatever's there. And they also, a lot of those have PoE pass-through, where you could power a downstream PoE device like a phone or a camera or an AP possibly. And the U7 Pro Wall doesn't have that. So my theory is that there will be a larger, kind of more akin to the size of the U6 Enterprise in-wall, where it's kind of that double width. It's going to be a lot more expensive too, probably as well. It'll probably be more in the $300 range, whereas the U7 Pro Wall is $200. But that wider one will probably have higher radio capabilities and those built-in switch ports that people are looking for. So we just haven't seen that yet, though. Yeah,
in Chris's review of the U7 Pro Wall, he did allude to that coming soon, but he just said if or when I was under NDA, I think he said. So it's like Schrodinger's AP. So
yeah. Keep a lookout for upcoming products. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Then last episode, I was talking about the new Protect update, and it uses H.265. I was having some problems with it, and I realised that you could enable it as a feature flag within Safari, but it still didn't work. I would advise strongly against using the enhanced bitrate, or enhanced, what do they call it? Enhanced recording engine, whatever, on Protect. It seemed to corrupt recordings and stop recording at certain times, and I've seen other people say the same thing. Even playback on mobile devices and stuff, it was a bit stuttery. So I think it does say it's in labs, which is essentially beta. So yeah, even with the feature flag enabled, it was broken.
Have you tried it in browsers besides Safari?
No, actually. Should have tried it in Chrome.
Yeah, I was gonna say we're both Apple guys, so we're preaching to the opposite choir here. But a lot of times I'll find things that act weird in Safari and Chrome or Firefox or Arc or whatever browser you want to pick there. Some Chromium-based thing will work.
Well, yeah, like, for example, this software we use to record this podcast is Squadcast. And they say they won't even let you get onto the website now if you got Safari, because I think they've had too many problems with it. Like, in the early days of recording this show or other shows I've got, I would click on the screen and then the recording would stop and I wouldn't know until the end of the recording, which was annoying. So, yeah. We got our first review of the show, which is awesome. So a guy called Jeremy has reviewed the UI Chat podcast. He got written a little paragraph with some questions. So he says, I love Ubiquiti and find this show interesting. I've been using the UniFi line for years and recently started a small MSP venture using UniFi products. My biggest gripe with Ubiquiti is that it can be hard to find information about their products, which is valid. For as great as their stuff is, the documentation can be rough. Maybe I'm in the minority, but I'd be interested to hear your analysis of different products and lines, and when you would use one over the other. For example, when would I use a Fortress gateway over a UDM? What are the differences? Can they both run all the applications like Access? And when would you use UISP over UniFi? You both seem knowledgeable on products, and it would be nice to hear your deep dive info when and why you use different Ubiquiti tools, as well as how those tools differ operationally. So yeah, thank you for your feedback. That's really good. It's nice to know that people are enjoying the show. It's good fun to record as well. His first question was, when would you use a Fortress gateway over a UDM? I can't remember who. Is Fortress a brand? Is it or?
That is the new. It's the UDM Pro Max kind of tier.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh yes.
I think the simple answer for that question is when the UDM Pro doesn't give you enough capacity. So the main things to look for are, what's your internet speed, how many clients are you having on this network, and probably another really important thing is like how many cameras or how many access points and switches are you using, this to manage how many of those devices. I just said that really clunkily, excuse me. But yeah, the Enterprise Fortress Gateway, which is, let me bring up the store page here so I'm not saying the wrong thing.
I don't think it's on there yet.
Well, yeah, that's not the Pro Max?
No.
Right. Okay, so we have the UDM Pro.
Yep.
379 US. The SE, the UDM Pro SE is $499. That adds PoE, adds 2.5 gig Ethernet. The UDM Pro Max is $599, so $600, and that does increase the limits a bit. But it's still the gigabit switch ports, and it doesn't really have. It's double the capacity, I believe.
Pretty
so you can
much,
manage, you can manage. They quote around 100 access points and switches with the UDM Pro and SE. I would say that's kind of really at the ragged edge, unless that performance has improved. I've seen UDM Pros struggle with 60, 70, 80 devices. Yeah. So I think that's improved a little bit, and that's why they quote 100. But if you have a very large network where you're well past 100 devices, you would either look to self-host, get the controller away from your firewall. So you'd be looking at the UXG line, or you'd be looking at the Dream Machine Pro Max, or the future upcoming, still not on the store, the Enterprise Fortress Gateway, which is a step beyond that even.
Yeah.
For capacity.
I remember them saying with the Fortress Gateway that it was going to be network only, because he was asking what the difference is. Can they both run all the apps? From what I remember from the UWC, there are some more information on that device somewhere. I think it can only run network, and I don't know if it's a UDM device, like a software controller device, or it's like a UXG. I'm not really sure.
I think it's more. It kind of reminds me of the Cloud Key Enterprise, where it's designed for large network-only installs. So if you want to add cameras, or if you're at the scale where you can justify the enterprise, either in throughput, management limits, client limits, whatever you're breaking out of the Pro Max, like if that's not enough for you, look towards that, and then you'd need to add a separate NVR, and that would be the thing that would run Protect for you if you want security cameras, or you'd add a Cloud Key. I think is the only option for access, talk, all the other applications.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, pretty much. Okay.
Yeah. So Yeah, they kind of have a tier. Like if you have small home networks, they have the smaller, the UniFi Express, all the way up to the Pro Max. It's kind of they're kind of still building it out, but it's which applications do you need, how many devices do you have, how many clients are you looking to support, and if you're an MSP, it might make sense to go integrated. It might make sense to centrally host. That'd be the other thing. If you're an MSP, I think it's still a very valid thing to look into using UXGs as your firewalls at client sites, and then either most likely you'd be self-hosting using Hostify, grabbing a cloud key, whatever you want to do for hosting the network application, and then if they want to add cameras, handle that separately. I think there's a lot of benefits to centralizing your management and adding components as they're needed.
Yeah, 100%. And then he also asks, why would you use USP? When would you use UISP over UniFi? So that one is basically just a difference in product lines. So UniFi is a lot of different things. It's the cameras, it's access. It's like their brand they use for all the systems, which are sort of all-in-one systems essentially. UISP in terms of software is all their what I like to call provider devices. So the point-to-point stuff, the fiber stuff, the UISP UPS devices as well, all the sort of WISP devices, they get managed on the UISP controller, and generally they have their own GUIs as well. Actually, I think they all do now. So they can either be standalone devices that are in a one-off situation and just left to be there, or they can be managed in a WISP environment, or a lot of MSPs do use UISP as well. So if they go to a customer that's got, a few buildings, they need to point-to-points, they can manage those alongside UniFi as well. So yeah, it's basically just a product line differentiation, and they've got their own cloud controllers. So
yeah, and a lot of time there's room for both. The WISP I used to work at, we used both. Definitely, yeah. UISP is more if you're an internet service provider, or you're need that level of gear where you're kind of more at that level. If you're an MSP and I always kind of imagine like a coffee shop that just needs some internet in the coffee shop. That would be a great use case for UniFi. But if you're trying to set up a WISP or deliver fiber to the premises, UISP would be the gear for that.
Yeah, pretty much. So yeah, hope that's answered your questions. And again, thanks for the feedback. It's nice to know that people are enjoying this show. So. And if you want to leave your own review on the podcast, you can do so at Apple Podcasts. There's a review section on there. I think there's one on Spotify as well. And if you're watching this on YouTube as well, just leave us some comments and we'll get back to you as well. Cool. The next section is Enterprise Watch, recurring segment. So there's some updates to the enterprise side of UniFi, some different software bits in here. So.
Yeah, I said recurring segment as a joke. I have a feeling we're going to be talking about this kind of every month going forward. Yeah. It's partially delivering on features that they've talked about or hinted at, and I think there's probably going to be some surprises. Like for me, this was a surprise. Zero touch provisioning. I mean, do you know what that is, or have you any experience with that?
I'd never seen it before UniFi have announced it, which I think is going to be there's some similar stuff like that Ubiquiti and Apple do. That they announce this feature and then a lot of people haven't heard of it before because they haven't been involved. But I'd imagine that zero touch provisioning is pretty standard in some other vendors, but or not.
What's Z? But yes, jokes aside, yes, zero touch provisioning. It's kind of a common enterprisey buzzword, but the whole goal is you take a new device out of box and you basically don't have to go bang on a keyboard or set it up manually. So for this, like what they outlined is you could ship a new in-box product to a site and they can just plug it in. There's a little 9-symbol string, so there's just like some random characters there, or a QR code you can scan, and then that will automatically add it to UniFiUI.com or the site manager, and then it'll automatically be set up. So it's just kind of streamlining the setup. So if you're an MSP and you are trying to add a new site or a new location or a new customer, you can just ship them the equipment and say, hey, scan this. It'll be added to my controller, or it'll provision out the networks that you need, and it's kind of a hands-off way to set up new devices.
Yeah.
And right now, it only supports the U7 Pro Max. It's only in the latest network 8.2 builds and UniFi OS 4.0, so it's very limited. This is something that I would assume over the next few months or maybe by next year, like all devices will support this, and older software will support it, etc. But it's pretty limited. But this was just kind of the first we saw of it.
Yeah, and I read somewhere that it's a one-time thing as well. So I'd imagine if you factory set it, you probably can't use it again, potentially. I'm not sure. That seems a bit weird.
I would assume that, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know where you read that, but yeah, that would surprise me because, yeah, I mean, it should be repeatable, where if you pull a device from a site and want to deploy it somewhere else, I would imagine you'd be able to do this again, but I don't know. Those kind of details we're still probably waiting to hear about. And the other thing, because that was in the Site Manager 3.41 beta, I think just today or just in the past day or two, 3.42 beta was released, and that added something they call Update Manager, which is an easy way to handle firmware updates, application updates, UniFi OS updates. So there's probably going to be, it seems like they're using Site Manager. I always think of it as unifi.ui.com, but Site Manager is the branding term for it. They're using that as the central place to...
Which makes sense.
Handle everything for consoles or... what's their latest term? Sorry. Cloud gateways. Yes. Consoles, cloud gateways, UXGs. All of their UniFi products will be managed, or at least will have features built onto Site Manager there.
Yeah. So I found it. There's a support help center thing from Ubiquiti. It says each ZTP code can only be used once. It will automatically be disabled if the device is factory set or otherwise removed from a site, which is a bit weird, but...
Must be security. There's some sort of security reason for that. That would be my assumption, but good to know.
Yeah, so I was trying to figure out how it does it. So I'd imagine once the device is plugged into the network, it will phone home essentially and wait for a response. You put that code in somewhere, and then it will do a handshake over them, I guess. It's the only way it could work, probably. Yeah,
it seems like it's just a different way to remote adopt a device. And then once it's on your controller... it provisions down your network settings, all of that.
Pretty cool.
But yeah, very cool.
Yeah. There's also Site Manager 3.42 beta, which I think we've got mentioned twice here. It's got Update Manager as well, which you can, if you've got self-hosted stuff, if you've got cloud keys, you've got UDMs and stuff, even Protect Cameras, all the devices will appear in one massive list, and you can click update or view the update status of each device if you want to as well. And I'll mention the Site Manager update, which I mentioned down here. So Site Manager also 3.42 adds Protect Vantage Point. I don't know if you've seen this.
What's that?
So if you've got at the moment, if you've got lots of Protect cameras, the only way to get more of them in one view is to use stacking, which is a bit limited. You can only use two devices at once. This will basically, you have two NVRs. One can be in one building, one could be in another building. That could be in separate countries. You pair them together, which I think there's a maximum of 3 at the moment, and it will combine those 3 NVRs in one Protect GUI essentially. So all the cameras will appear at once. So without having to stack them, it will just do some magic in there and combine them. So I've had a quick play around. It seems to work pretty well. It doesn't seem any lag at all, any slowdown by doing that. So it's pretty cool idea.
Yeah, that's awesome. I didn't know that was a thing. But yeah, it seems like Site Manager that is the destination for a lot of this, a lot of these features that they're building out and putting a lot of focus on this year. It seems like Site Manager, keep an eye on that because there's going to be a lot more stuff added there, especially if you have multiple sites.
Oh yeah, definitely. Cool. And then we'll just mention Cody's review. So he's done a huge video, UniFi Network Complete Setup 2024. So I haven't watched it just yet, but it'll probably be quite an extensive setup guide. Like Chris has done plenty of those before in the past. So yeah, if you...
Yeah, I watched it. It's a really good overview, and it answers a lot of the common questions of like which hardware should I buy, how do I set up the software.
Okay.
So it's about 40 minutes, so it's a big commitment there if you don't have the time. But if you're interested and kind of new to Ubiquiti, it's a great starting point. Yeah,
definitely. Cool. So got a few bits of hardware. It's been a quieter month. They've got 3 new hardware devices. So we've got the first Ultra UniFi access device. So this is designed for one door, and it's got all the relay connections on the back. So usually you have the door reader powered by PoE. It links back into the UniFi access hub, I believe it's called. But this is designed for one door on the entrance, and if you're exiting the door, you can connect what they call a dumb push button, and then that'll connect via like a dry relay to the hub as well, which is really good. It's like $129. If you just got one door to get running, it seems like a good solution.
Yeah, and it fits in. You said this was the first Ultra, because that fits in with their still very confusing Ultra branding, where it's a lot of features, a lot of capability for a low price. So it's a nice entry level product in a way, or like kind of a limited thing, just like the Cloud Gateway Ultra. It's kind of limited in some ways, but it gives you a lot for a low price. So nice to see that.
Well, also it removes even if you want to deploy access. If you want to deploy access, the cost to entry is quite high. You have to buy the you have to buy the access hub. You have to buy the readers and stuff. Whereas with this, you could just use this if you just got very simple needs. You haven't got the need for cameras on each door. You don't need like extra dry relays and stuff. If it's just a door, then you can sort of bring the cost down of deployment, which is quite good. So
right, so you don't need a hub. You would just need a Cloud Key running access, or a Dream Machine or Cloud Gateway running access. That's all you'd need.
Yep.
Very cool.
Yeah. This was announced today or last night, I believe. So this is their third device in the UniFi Connect line for EV stuff. So they originally launched a larger original EV Connect device maybe a year or two ago. They released a Pro version in December, which added support for payment terminal, added support for Wi-Fi, and then they've dropped the original device and they've just kept the Pro one they launched a few months ago. This one is a Lite version. Now this will probably end up being their most popular device because it's half the price of the Pro version, and it hasn't got the big screen. I don't think there'll be much need for that screen with a lot of deployment, so they'll probably end up selling a lot of these. So it's just a smaller device with a very small screen instead of this huge one they had. So it's $499 in the US. The Pro one's about $1,100. It still does the same speed charging, 11 kilowatt AC level 2 or type 2. There's a 1.7 inch screen. It's still limited to the US essentially because I think we discussed a while back. I got a bit confused. The standard charging plug in the US is very different to the one we use in even other countries. So it's limited to one country at the moment. But yeah, it's good to see that they are expanding the lineup and lowering the price to entry, which is good. So
yeah, and I think the other thing to call out is I think from what I read, it doesn't support the optional card reader accessory. So no. I think you would need the Pro, and you would need that. I think it was like $300 card reading accessory. If what you're trying to do is like provide access to the public where they'll pay per charge.
Yep.
So maybe this would only apply if you're doing it in home, or if you're providing it for free to your employees. Like I'm trying to imagine where the Station Lite, since you don't have that capability to charge people, it has to be for free, right?
I would imagine in my head the use case for it being to public facing is very limited.
Yeah.
This is going to be free charging at offices.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And in that case, save the money, buy the Lite, and then you have budget for the $400 piece of aluminum to the stand.
Yeah, I think there are better. Well, the only benefit of using these is, from my research, if you want to offer charging to the public, you have to go via like a contractor. You have to get the charging company to help install them and do the charging and charge them that way. And then they would get the revenue. Where this is all yourself. So if you did want to offer charging to the public, like at a hotel or whatever, you could get these and do it all yourself. There's very limited solutions out there to charge people for charging that isn't going via a third-party company. So I can see where it would work. It's a bit of a niche use case, but I'd imagine most of the primary use of this is going to be free charging at offices, which is quite a common thing at the moment. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Don't know if you've seen this one. The AI Pro enhancer. So a little while ago, they announced like a LED light ring for the G5 Pro. This one is for the AI Pro, and it looks like. Right, it looks quite bulbous on the camera. You'll see a picture on screen if you're watching this on YouTube. But so it's got a few things built in. It's got a light ring built in, like a floodlight, which is the same sort of brightness as the smart floodlight, separate accessory. It's got a loudspeaker, so you can talk to people if you want to. But also, I think Jesse, I can't remember his handle on Twitter, but he's already tested out the radar function, which will actually measure how far away in centimeters a car or person is from the camera. So very, very, very clever. I think it was Jesse anyway, but someone put a picture on Twitter where it detected a car, detected the registration license plate, but also told you how far away the car was from the camera. So yeah,
that's
not
really
sure
cool.
what benefit that provides, but it's very cool. Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it'll feed into the AI and give you important data. The other side
possibly.
There. But yeah, I mean, 179 US at least. I don't know what it is for you. The
Similar.
Enhanced IR range. So if you're really trying to cover outdoor areas at night, the radar stuff, that's wild. I don't know what to think about that. But the floodlight, the increased range for your IR detection and loudspeaker. Wow, that's cool. Yeah, very cool little device there.
Yeah, and I believe Cody tested out the G5 enhancer, and if it's the same floodlight, it's got it can basically do color night vision, so it brightens it up so bright that it kicks in the color for the camera. So yeah, that's it for the hardware. There wasn't much, so unless there's anything surprised announced tomorrow. So
yeah, stay tuned. In the next 4 days we're gonna see something, I'm sure.
Yeah. Right, let's get into some software. There's a few bits in here. The first one is very much me focused. It's UniFi Talk UK number porting is now here, which is awesome. So, so that's part of UniFi Talk 3.2.0. And the massive news is I reset my UniFi Talk application on my Cloud Key, and there were some new countries in there. It was like, I can't remember what the countries were, but there was a very important one. It was international. So where Ubiquiti hasn't deployed UniFi Talk cloud services, you can now use a third-party SIP in any country in the world you want, so long as you're using UniFi Talk hardware, obviously. But that's really good because it's been very, very limited since release. I think back in 2020 or 2021. So basically anyone in the whole world can now use it as long as they can buy a UniFi Talk phone with whatever SIP provider they want. So, yeah.
And they specifically called out Germany. They added support for Germany, plus it seems like Germany and everywhere else, or wherever your SIP provider is, will support it. Yeah. Which is nice. And then the number porting, I think wasn't that supposed to be Q3? Like it's been months last year. I don't remember when they promised it, but it's nice to see that finally delivered.
UniFi Talk launched in the UK last year, but number porting was just coming soon the whole time. So there was never any time frame for it. So someone on the community as well noted that if you pick one of 3 different German SIP providers, it'll auto-fill all the stuff in. Whatever details they need for that, like the connection IPs and domain names, I'm not sure, but it looks like it auto-fills all the default stuff in, which is really cool. So yeah, that looks really good. I've got a video I'm working on that will do like a full UK setup of UniFi Talk if anyone's interested in that. So
nice. Yeah. So is this? You're planning on deploying UniFi Talk now that number porting is there? Is that the case?
Yeah, my parents' business. We've been using like a German SIP provider, which has operating.
There you go. Now you're supported.
Yeah. So and it's cheaper as well. I think it's £20 cheaper a month. So, which is awesome. Yeah. We've already looked at Site Manager 3.4.2. I don't know if that's meant to be 3.4.2 or just 3.42, but yeah.
Yeah, it's 3.42.
I know.
So I don't know. Same thing with I don't know what's going to kick them over to Site Manager 4. I assume that'll be a major upgrade, but UniFi OS 4 wasn't a major change. Seems arbitrary. But yeah, 3.42 and 3.41 are the EAs we already talked about.
Okay, we do have, this was announced yesterday, we do have UniFi OS 4.0.6 for Dream Machines, mainly Dream Machines, but it is also coming to MVRs and other stuff, but the main features are for the Dream Machines. So you've put in the show notes, it's got the high availability feature now, which I have looked at, but I don't fully understand. They got a little picture here. I don't fully understand how one of the gateways will actually fail over properly, but yeah.
Yeah, I think we talked about this before. As long as you have the cabling and connections to support it, where if you have two UDM Pros or UDM Pro Maxes, I think it's also the SE, any of those, I think are the three devices that they support. As long as you have, two cables coming from your internet provider at the bare minimum, as long as you can provide a WAN to Unit 1 and Unit 2, this will automatically fail over if there's an issue with the hardware. So this was a big feature that they talked about, and what was added was the automatic failover part, where I think you could do it. You could trigger it manually. Yeah. But this is in 4.0.6 they added the automatic failover, and I know people have tested it. It's like a couple milliseconds worth of downtime, but to switch between those two. So there's kind of hardware redundancy, and I think they leverage VRRP, virtual router redundancy protocol. So
what I found super weird was if you look at the picture in the release notes, the pictures of the UDM. So UDM 1 has a connection to the WAN, and then an interconnect on port 7. But then UDM 2 has WAN going into port 1 on the UDM 1. So I was thinking if UDM 1 dies or this PSU fails, surely UDM 2 is not going to actually get online.
Yeah, that is curious. My typical way when I think about this kind of setup, it's everything's redundant. You have two cables coming from your internet provider to two different pieces of hardware and two different connections to your LAN network. So like Unit 1 can completely go away. This almost implies that there's some sort of it reminds me of the LTE device. Yep. Where it'll kind of automatically tunnel through your network. You can plug it in anywhere, and it'll act as a internet connection, even if you plug it in way downstream. So maybe they're doing something like that. I'm not sure what they're hinting at with that the way they're showing those cables connected there.
Yeah, even in their help guide, it says connect the Shadow Gateway's WAN port to port 1 through 6 or port 8.
Right, because you do need the two devices. Like if you have two UDM Pros, you need them interconnected.
Oh, yeah,
but you also, I think this is their solution to say, hey, I have an internet provider, they're only giving me one connection, or I don't have a switch before my firewall. I only have one Ethernet cable to plug in. How does this work with that? I think maybe that's, I think it would be like how they're doing the LTE, where they're automatically tunneling it through.
Oh, okay.
Don't quote me on that. That's kind of speculation on my part. But
actually, it does say here in so if you do need to have it fail over, it says in step 3, disconnect the WAN port on the Shadow Gateway and mirror the primary's WAN cabling. Okay, if your ISP only provides
that's not really automatic then. That still requires someone driving to the site to move some cables. Or
and then what we mentioned last time was if your ISP only provides a single uplink, use a UniFi switch with a dedicated untagged native VLAN or an unmanaged switch to split the ports.
Yeah. So there's a lot of asterisks on this.
There is.
I think if you're considering this, it's one of those really nice to have features for higher end networks or places where redundancy is critical or downtime is very expensive. But I would look into all of these details and make sure that this is going to work for you before you get too excited.
Yeah.
But in general, 4.06, the other big thing was SNMP. That was another thing that people have complained about missing on the cloud gateways and the UXGs. So this was something that was supported in the past. It's supported in UISP or edge routers.
Yep.
But SNMP is useful for getting statistics from your network, or even, there's a lot of use cases for SNMP, but now SNMP support is there. And there's a lot of nice bug fixes. And in the gateways 4.06, which are for all the UXG models, there's a lot of things that I wanted to call out. Just improved stability of WireGuard, issuing static IP leases, the speed test accuracy is improved SFP link stability, accuracy of DHCP lease information, all things that are kind of, this almost goes under the enterprise watch. Like these are delivering things that either shortcomings of these features from before that people have, filed bug reports about, or just kind of making them more robust. So it kind of is really delivering on the enterprise promise for UniFi there.
Oh yeah, 100%. No, that's really good. There's also improved WAN failover detection as well. So.
Yeah, and less memory usage for Suricata or traffic identification. Improved PPOE stability, and I was curious. I'm almost tempted to test it. They mentioned improved WireGuard VPN and OpenVPN throughput, specifically for the UXG Lite, which is probably the one that could use it the most. So I'm curious if that's a dramatic improvement, or if it's just like 5% better or something.
Yeah. Awesome. And then you've mentioned UniFi Protect firmware 471.110, and this was, I spelled firmware wrong. This was pulled 9 days ago because some people had some issues with the doorbells. I'm not entirely sure what issues they were. Wasn't paying attention to that, but
doorbells were disconnecting. So yeah, so this is
Wi-Fi.
This was an early access release, 4.71.110.
Yep.
It's funny. The only reason I included this, I mean, it's a pretty minor version bump to specifically the camera firmware, but I love that they said improved device resiliency, enhanced streaming performance, and then they pulled this update because it was, detrimental to resiliency and performance. So another use case for waiting for GA or at the very least release candidate releases there.
Well, yeah, it's good that people are trying it out and stuff. So that's good. UISP Application 24126. I actually updated my controller today and noticed there was some little improvements on this. And you also mentioned that 2493 was released 2 months ago, so it's been a little while, but not too bad.
Yes, I think this was the first EA or the first new software you've seen in like 2 months or so. You said you've already installed it?
Yeah, I didn't notice much different. There was some improved. There's more granular stats on Air Max devices for. Oh yeah, it would allow log throughput as well as traffic. So on Air Max devices, it would list how much throughput in megabytes or gigabytes per refresh was going over that interface. I thought that was. But also, there's lots of. If you update the firmware on a device, in the stats, it will now have a little timestamp and said firmware was updated, so you know why it went off. So it's actually logging what's happened to the device, so it's good.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of their improvements lately, they've been focusing on the side panel for configuration. Yeah. And a lot of it is, stats, reporting, getting better data out of your devices. And I think a lot of work has been gone into the CRM side too.
Oh yeah.
If you use that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, improved device statistics to show traffic for all ports. So yeah, again, it's kind of an interface, isn't it, a port, so. And there's also remote access for EdgeSwitch X. There's an update which we'll just mention now for EdgeSwitch X. They've basically brought that in line with the UISP switches. The GUI is exactly the same. The firmware version is exactly the same now, because it jumped from 152 all the way up to 181, and that's probably helped them because the UISP switch has that feature. Help them bring remote access to the EdgeSwitch X products, so you can do it's like a port forward, isn't it? So yeah.
Very exciting stuff. Now the EdgeSwitch X, is that, I get confused. Are those the ones that, I think they were the most recent wow, that's hard to say, EdgeSwitch models?
Yeah, there's EdgeSwitch X and XP. I think X has only got one 24-volt port, and XP. Yeah, they are the most recent products, to be fair. I've got these in. I've actually got one of the XPs as my incoming switch for two 24-volt. One's a UISP LT and one's a gigabeam, so it sort of brings in 24-volt into my network, and I can split it out where I want it. But yeah, they're very good switches, to be fair. And the GUI now looks like a UISP switch GUI. So
yeah, and they seem kind of like a weirdly abandoned. I mean, that's probably why this release is notable. It's like the first signs of life in 9 months, and before that, I think it was 2 years ago. Because my memory is there were all the EdgeSwitch models. This EdgeSwitch X, those two models came out maybe 2018. Don't quote me on that, but it came out like right near the end.
Mm.
And then, yeah, it kind of felt abandoned for a long time. So, along with the Air Max M, all the other things that we saw, like little minor security updates for, it's like old products that are still technically getting software updates. There you go, EdgeSwitch X, people.
Yeah. I thought this was interesting. There's UISP Fiber 180. This is, again, not one that's been abandoned, but in terms of software, definitely. They've had like a release a while back, like XGS PON for UISP Fiber, I think last year now. But this adds an interesting feature called MAC address limiting, but it's dynamic and static. So, yeah. In terms of how I've used UISP Fiber before, I think you can... I don't know where this would be. You can actually block... Well, one, you can't use third-party ONUs with UISP Fiber because they don't work. We don't work with it. But also, like, it does the blocking and stuff or natively, so I'm not sure where that will come in. But yeah.
Well, yeah. The use case for this would be if you're an internet provider and you're providing fiber to the home. I mean, you could use it in other places, but that's my mind. Internet provider, you give this device to someone, and then they could plug in their own, all-in-one Wi-Fi router or whatever networking equipment they have. And now this feature would say, hey, if they're trying to run a cable to their neighbor's house and plug a second MAC address in, like, is that what the goal of this is, I guess? That's, I mean, yeah, like, the other thing is, like...
That is what it is.
Or similar to, like, PPoE, where you need, like, a username and password, or if you have a... it's not super common in the US. Maybe it is in the UK, where you need to give your MAC address to your internet provider and say, this is what I'm plugging in here, or they need to specifically allow that one device to connect. And if you plug in a second device, it will not, because that's protecting their network. It's also probably limiting the number of public IPs they give out. There's a lot of reasons why you'd want to control that edge of the network there. So that's my assumption of what this network is, or this feature is.
Yeah, I didn't read it properly earlier, so yeah, I thought it was blocking ONUs, but it's not. It's blocking. Yeah, it is allowing and disallowing stuff that can be plugged into it. Essentially, yeah, that's right. So yeah, when we did fiber with UISP Fiber, we used PPoE primarily, which it's a lot easier to manage. But I've never seen MAC address limiting in use in the UK before, so for ISP anyway. So
yeah, I'm familiar in the Cisco world. It's like a sticky MAC address where that way you can't have 18 devices on one port. You'd say, hey, learn this one and that's it, or learn these two and that's it. But
yeah, I won't go into it too much, but we did have problems with some customers sharing their internet connection.
Well, hey, install USP Fiber 4.8.0 and your problems are solved.
Yeah. Oh, I put it down as 1.8.0 in the show notes. Oh well, it's actually 4. Yeah, some of the stuff in here there's like some improvements to the Wi-Fi ONUs, some different pieces in there like ONU reboots and stuff. But no, it's definitely a good platform. It's I think I mentioned it before. It's probably the best fiber OLT ONU system I've ever seen because it's actually got a GUI. Every other OLT and ONU system is all command line based. It's so tedious to use and manage. But yeah.
Yeah, and that's the main selling point or the reason to buy in. It's that integration, ease of use. The cost of it is sometimes you have to wait 2 years for MAC address limiting or features that you'd think would be there from day one, but hey, now it's there.
Yeah, that's all the software basically. I've got one honorable mention very quickly to the Flex-Mini. It's now got CPU reporting. So, yeah, I thought that was quite interesting.
Yeah, and that's that reminds me. So it's the Flex-Mini and I think it's the Ultra. Yeah. I think those are the two that do not have the full feature set of a basic UniFi switch. So it doesn't have, in the GUI they call it the debug tools. It's like the command line interface that you can get into. They don't have spanning tree. There's a bunch of like networking features that those don't support. And I mean, as far as I know, the Flex-Mini didn't gain those. This is only you get a little graph of how much CPU is being used, but you don't get all those features that are still missing from that and the Ultra switches.
I think when the Ultra switch debuted, I think it was lacking VLAN custom port profiles, whatever they call it now, and it now does. I think it has it now. I believe they added it in after the fact.
Yeah, I believe you're correct. I think there was a software, like the first major software update after release added that and a few other small things, but I think that limitation still applies, where there's no debug terminal, there's no, you can't SSH to it and get into a command line, and I think spanning tree is probably the biggest limitation. Spanning tree might have been addressed, so maybe not. But
they said something about LDDP or link. Is it LDP?
Yeah, LLDP, which would like automatically detect, like if you plug a phone in, it'll detect what brand it is and get some information.
Oh, sweet. Okay. They said that's been improved. So
yeah, so it's as much features as they can give it, I assume.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I think there's one thing. There was one thing I could mention. I can't remember. But no. So what have we been working on personally? I haven't got any news. Still plodding along with my new website, but you've got a new website you've put in with a question mark. So what's going on there?
Well, first of all, how is your website going? I last time we talked, you were still manually cutting over articles and dealing with dead links, and did that all get fixed, or are you still struggling with that?
Oh, so I found a cool feature within Webflow. I don't know if I mentioned it. I was doing manual 301 redirects, but I've now worked out to do wildcard rules. Basically the way WordPress organizes things, I've got / the year, but I could just I can put one rule in for 1 year and all the redirects are done automatically. I am probably no closer to finishing than I was last time, to be honest.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of work for a little reward. So
yeah,
wildcards are nice though. I mean, that seems like that'll make that process easier, but yeah, I'm sure it's still just a lot of fiddling with old articles and whatnot.
I'm now happy with the design, so it takes me a while to sort of get my brain used to a design that if it's new, I'm like I'm sort of on the fence, but I'm actually quite happy with it now. So every new stuff I'm writing is obviously going on there, but all the old stuff I've still got to move over. So.
And you're still really happy with Webflow?
Yeah, it's awesome. The only thing I can't get working just yet is the AdSense stuff, which is not a priority at the moment. I can't get that working, but yeah. Right. But yeah, no, the design's very nice. The way you manage it's really nice. So yeah, quite happy with it.
Yeah, from the outside, not dealing with wildcard redirects or anything, like I like the new design and it seems nice to me. So
nice one, thanks.
Glad you're having a good time with that. And yeah, you definitely sparked my interest last time. I haven't spent a ton of time looking into Webflow, but that's kind of where I'm headed.
Okay. The
main thing is, at the end of July, my Squarespace website is due for renewal. I'm on an annual plan. Oh, yeah. So 99% chance I'll just let that renew. But it also, you talking about Webflow, that renewal coming up, and just kind of in general, I just feel like I haven't loved working on my website as much as I used to. And part of that's just like not having time, but part of it is I think the tooling that I use. So I've been looking at what I want to do. Like I played around with Notion for the interactive comparison charts. You saying Webflow kind of brought that to my attention, so I've been checking that out. And I'm very tempted to make a move. So I think that's what I want to do. I have always regretted any time I've ever said like I'm going to be posting this or I'm going to be doing this in the future or whatever. So I'm not promising I will have a new website in July. I'm in the investigation stage.
Well, to be clear, you haven't said which July. So
that's true.
Yeah.
Very good point. July 2030 coming soon. Yeah. So yeah, I no promises, but I'm very tempted to build something new in a way that makes it easier. Because I think for me, like building my posts, I just kind of kept making them more difficult or longer or more involved to the point where like I look at making one and it's just like I know it's going to be so much work and it's such a pain to like write in this format and then copy it over and then get the links just right and the formatting just right. I really want to overhaul how I handle writing something and publishing it and just making that less of a pain, which is probably a big reason why you move to Webflow, I would assume is there's a lot of benefits in how you can design your website and all that, but it also makes publishing easier. It makes monetization easier. There's just a lot of things I kind of want to take the time to rework. So I probably won't be posting a ton of articles. I'll be spending more time kind of behind the scenes getting things set up, and then hopefully that makes publishing in the future easier and quicker.
Yeah. You don't want stuff to get in the way of making something. Essentially, it sort of disheartens you a little bit when you're trying to. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, because I love writing in Markdown, and then the thing is that isn't Squarespace, so I need to either deal with Squarespace's weird Markdown support, or I always have to like redo my headings, redo the images, redo the links, and it's just it makes all those like little hurdles just leads to me not posting something, you know?
Yeah, I got you. Makes sense. Now, the main reason I moved was just the server that my website was on was crashing every now and again, and in terms of code, it's such a bloated system. So it loads much faster now, which is nice. So
WordPress. Who bloated? Are you sure? I've never heard that about WordPress.
Yeah. Okie doke. I think that's everything. We're literally just under an hour, which is really good. So we're going to leave it there. So as always, you can find this podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and more. For a full description of this show, visit the episode link in the show notes. If anyone has any Ubiquiti-related questions, please email them to info@theinterface.uk, and we'll be sure to go through the questions in a future episode. Thanks for listening to the UI Chat podcast. If you like what we do, follow the show on all the podcast platforms and on YouTube. Give us a rating. This really helps other people find this show. You can find my website at theinterface.uk, and then your website is
evanmccann.net. At least
fantastic
for now.
Yeah, for now. Yeah,
we'll see.
Awesome. Thanks for listening and watching, and we'll see you again next time.
See ya.